Okay, here we go then with section 1, which is the assembly of the cockpit. The main components are the floor of the cockpit, the pilot's seat, the rear bulkhead and the front bulkhead, the pilot himself, and the joystick that the pilot would control the aeroplane with. So let's get cracking. So I'm going to take the I think the thing to do actually is to build the actual cockpit area itself, and then we'll have a go at painting the pilot. So I'm going to use the sharp knife because I'm a grown-up, and just take the bits from the sprue. So you can see on the instructions that there are numbers for each part, and then on the sprue itself, if you can see that, there are numbers printed on the sprue so you can identify which bit is which. Is that focusing up all right? Not sure if it is. There, I'm sure you can see the numbers on the sprues. So I'm just going to put my glasses on actually, because I can't see much without them these days. So there's front section of bulkhead. There's the rear. I can see the seat, which I'm cutting off there like that. As I say, using the sharp knife could be a bit tricky for younger children, so adult supervision, a bit of adult help wouldn't go amiss. What else do we need? Oh yes, the frame, the base frame of the cockpit is on the other sprue. Here it is. This is quite delicate. There are lots of long straight thin pieces that might snap quite easily, so let's just cut that off there and cut that off there. That's it, that's got that. We'll put all those pieces there together. 1, 2, and the seats, we got the seat, 1, 2, 3, 4. I think I'll leave the joystick on until I need it. Okay, now they're still wet from the washing procedure, so give those a little bit of a dry off. Now the glue, here we are. I mean, I'm going to be dead honest with you here. I usually use a different type of glue than the Humbrol poly cement, but this is, this will do the trick. The important thing is with this glue is less is more, and something I didn't introduce in the first part of the video was the Humbrol cocktail stick. Now this, if you just apply the glue, which is coming out in bubbles at the moment, if you apply the glue to the cocktail stick and then onto the part, it'll make life a lot easier. So, trusty bit of kitchen roll there. Move these bits to the side. So let's start with this assembly. So, part 29 is this one. It's got a post at the rear which faces backwards, and then the cockpit frame floor, which has a little lug onto the end, engages in there. So first thing I'm going to do is stick those two bits together. So a little bit of glue in that slot. There we are. And then stick that part into there. Can you see that with my fingers in the way? Probably not. So those two parts are now glued together like that. Can you see that okay? Good. Now it's time to glue the seat here. Now this is where the little file comes in, because the sprue runners, I'm going to put my even better glasses on for this because these parts are tiny and I'm nearly 60 and my eyes are a bit gauzy. Let's put the super duper magnifying glasses on. yeah, the sprue, when you take parts off the sprue runners, sometimes it can leave a little bit extra on there that you want to file off to ensure that it fits properly. So I'm just going to file these down. Always worth referring to the picture just to make sure you're not filing off any bits that are actually needed, which I don't think I am on this occasion. So, file those down like this. Okay. Now, I've never done one of these type of videos before, and I've seen others which all seem to be a bit speeded up when they're before they're published on YouTube. So I think I'll probably end up doubling the speed of this. I don't know, or perhaps luckily I've got a son who's pretty good on this kind of thing, and I'll ask his help. Tweezer's coming into play here because this is a tiny part. Ugh. So the back of the seat fits onto those 4 posts there. There we are. So that's the seat fixed onto the rear bulkhead, and that should stay there quite nicely. I'm going to let that dry for a little while. Just pause the video. Sorry, you're going to see my... So now it's time to glue the front section of the bulkhead onto the floor of the cockpit. So teeny weeny little glue. This is a new skill for me. I don't usually use a cocktail stick, so this is a new skill for me. I usually use a different sort of applicator, but hey ho. Right, so so there's a big hole in that, and that part is going to go through the big hole, and the legs will stick into there quite nicely. I'll give you a close-up view of this in a minute, folks, but there we are. You see how that all sits in there quite nicely together. So there's the rear bulkhead. That's sort of like the instrument panel in front of the seat there. The seat's connected onto those 4 posts, and I'm going to set that aside to dry before we stuck to my finger, before we come to paint it in a little while. Quite fiddly this bit, but it's worth it when it's done, because this happens in a lot of Airfix kits. You put the fuselage halves together and you lose all this interior detail, but it's very important that the builder, the person who did it, knows it's there. So there we are. The next stage is assembling the section 2 is assembling the propeller, which is quite an exciting bit to get stuck into, and then after that we'll do a little bit of painting. So be careful when you cut the propeller off of the sprue, because it is it's quite fragile, and I'm just going to put the lid back on the glue so it doesn't dry out. I remember when I was a kid, my mum used to give me a pin, a dressmaking pin, to put in the top, and that seemed to work quite well. So cut down carefully where the sprue is connected to the propeller, and there we are, the old 3-braided propeller for the Mark 1 Spitfire there. Set that to one side, and then we'll look for part 8 and part 6, which are the little disc that's going to go inside the where the engine would be, and the cone shaped thing, which is called a spinner. It goes on the covers the hub of the propeller, if you like. So I'll just trim some little extra bits away from there. I do hope somebody is has got hold of one of these and they're having a little go at it. It's be strange to think I'm doing this all for my own benefit, although I am quite enjoying talking as I build, and I'm enjoying building this little Spitfire. Actually, I haven't done one for a while, and I think a lot of my builds this year are going to be Battle of Britain related, because this year is the 80th anniversary. Nearly dropped that bit on the floor. This year is the 80th anniversary, so I reckon come August, September we'll be all over the Battle of Britain. The children might be learning about it in the new year at school. I'm not sure, but there'll certainly be some celebrations, hopefully, notwithstanding the current situation we all find ourselves in. So, right, a little dab of glue on the cocktail stick onto the centre of the plate at the back, and then just bob there's a little hole in the back of the prop. Can you see that? So that will engage in the centre of that disc. There's a little stub that it'll engage into, and that's on there. So there's the prop connected, and then we'll just put the spinner, the little cone thing I mentioned earlier on. If I can pick it up with my sausage fingers, I'll put that on there. Oh, good at dropping things. There's the spinner there, and I'm going to stick that over the prop now with my trusty cocktail stick. So I think in this video you've all been there for about 10 minutes now. I don't want you to get bored. I'll get this far, and actually we're 12 minutes in. I might do another few minutes and perhaps start painting, but there's the propeller assembly ready to go. I think it's time to do a little bit of painting now. Just referring back to sticking that the cockpit floor together, there is an exploded drawing there to show you where the where the instrument panel part actually engages with the subframe assembly there. There's a little exploded drawing to show how that connects in. But I think what I'm going to do is just paint the inside of the fuselage halves, and probably put some paint on the assembly that we've just done, so that we can get ready to close the fuselage up, and it will start to look like an aeroplane then. So I'm going to just talk a little bit about painting before you leave me. It's the numbers on the instructions that aren't circled indicate the paint colours. So for instance, the inside of the cockpit on this kit, we're going to paint number 30, and you can see the tub's got a little number on it indicating the paint colour. Now these are Humbrol acrylic paints in these little tiny pots, specifically for these starter sets and so on. I quite like Humbrol paints, but the important thing is to water them down. Mix them down to 50-50. Don't try and paint it straight from the pot. A, there probably won't be enough paint, and B, it won't be the right thickness. It needs to be a sort of milky, thin, milky consistency to enable you to do one or two perhaps thin, even coats over the model. Don't try and slosh it on thickly, because it will spoil the effect. Now what I'm doing now is not great television, but I'm just stirring the paint to mix all the pigment in, so that the paint will actually be the right colour to use when we come to do so. So I'm going to leave you now, and come back in a minute when I've done some painting and just talk a bit more about how we do the painting. Okay. Okay folks, so painting. I've got my trusty Humbrol brush from the starter kit, And all I've done is I've just tipped a tiny bit of the number 30 Humbrol green paint into this former yogurt pot, and I've mixed in approximately 50 percentage of water, and I'm just going to give it a good old mix up now so that it's a nice milky consistency to apply to the model. Okay. So I'm going, and it's not really very much. I mean, if you look at how much has gone from the little pot, there's hardly much at all. Just a few drips is necessary to generate all this paint. And so I'm going to begin by painting the fuselage halves while they're still on the sprue, the inside. This is the inside of the fuselage sections here. And I've just noticed, in actual fact, rest my brush on there for now, I've just noticed a large horrible bit of, oh no it wasn't, I thought it was a bit of excess plastic. There are some sink marks, but I'm not too worried about those. That's again from the manufacturing process where the plastic, the styrene, is injected into the mould. You sometimes get some little marks which, if they're on the outside of the model, they need to be filled and sanded down to do a proper job, but on this occasion we're not too worried. There's some lovely interior framing detail on the inside of the fuselage of the cockpit, so we want to preserve that. So we'll just start by putting a first thin coat of this Humbrol number 30, a bit watery, but it doesn't matter, over the, and keeping the brush strokes all running in the same direction. Okay, so there it is, just applying the paint in here into all the little nooks and crannies in there, because believe it or not, some of this will be seen actually if you look hard enough through the cockpit canopy when the model's finished. I'll go up as far as there and as far as there. Okay. Actually, that paint might be a little bit watery. I'm going to introduce a teeny weeny little bit more of the Humbrol green and just stir it in. Just a drop or two. There we are. Just literally drips of paint into that mix, just to make it a little bit more, give it a bit more substance. Okay. Stirring that in. That's nice, and then I'll start on the other side of the cockpit. Oh yeah, that's a little bit thicker now. That's nice. Doesn't have to be thick at all. Just needs to be, as I say, the consistency of milk, and away you go. I really love the painting side of modelling, especially I've got an airbrush, but man, it's a fiddle. You have to spend more time cleaning it after you've used it than you actually do using it. So sometimes I think just using a brush is simpler and more rewarding, actually, because I do get a bit fed up with cleaning the airbrush. And I think there's a bit more skill involved as well, actually, than just spraying it over. So there we are. You could go to town on this. There are representations of the flight controls moulded into the side of the aircraft, like trim control levers and the throttle levers in there. You could go to town if you had the right colour paints and you studied all the pictures on the internet of the inside of a Spitfire, and people do go into immense detail with these models, even in this scale, but I'm not inclined to do that. So there we are, that's the inside painted. When it dries it will look a lot more even, and we may go over it again anyway. So I'll just leave that to one side to dry. I'll leave you now while I do a little bit more painting. The instructions say to paint this a combination of blue and black. Some of it's sorry, green and black. Some of it needs to be green, some of it needs to be black, and then I'll come back to you to move on to the next steps. One of the things I haven't done yet is take the joystick, the tiny little control column. Oh, dropped it. Tiny little control column from the sprue. I'll stick that in before I start painting. So for now I think I'll pause you there.